Just waiting to go live on YouTube. Alright, man, we're up. Live on YouTube. What's up? What's up, YouTube? This stream will be short. You know, it's going to be a nice, short, late night stream. Just reacting to some videos and probably playing some video games. Alright. Which one?
Here.
Okay, so apparently Real Madrid's manager Xabi Alonso got sacked, apparently. And this video is about the real reason why Xabi Alonso failed at Real Madrid. Let's check it out.
Here's a clip of Xabi Alonso walking up to the podium to receive his UEFA Super Cup runner-up medal after a brutal 3-2 defeat to their rivals Barcelona. But as he approaches Madrid president Florentino Perez, well, his face says it all. He does not look happy. In fact, he doesn't even try to make eye contact.
Yeah, he's like, dude, I'm about to sack this guy. That's the look. That's that look. He's about to sack him.
With Xabi Alonso. For context, this is how Florentino Perez greeted rival club manager Hansi Flick as he walked up to the podium. But not long after this, Xabi Alonso's time at Real Madrid would come to an end, after not even a single full season. What's wild is, this past summer, when Alonso initially joined Real Madrid, he was seen as one of the most tactically brilliant managers in the world. The same manager that went undefeated in Bundesliga, nearly winning Bayer Leverkusen a minor treble. A man who, in many opinions, was one of the greatest holding midfielders of all time. A player who at 20 years old was made the captain of Real Sociedad, and a player who has literally won every single major trophy possible. I don't think Xabi Alonso could have ever imagined that not even within a full single season, he would have enough and leave his job. A manager who was only 4 points away in the middle of the season from being on top of the league table. I mean, come on, even Mikel Arteta points away in the middle of the season from being—
That's wild. Only 4 points away from being on top of the table, a La Liga table, and still got sacked.
On top of the league table. I mean, come on, even Mikel Arteta finished second place in the Premier League for so many seasons, yet he still has his job. But this isn't just the case of Real Madrid having higher than normal standards alone, because while some casual football fans might see Xabi Alonso's sacking as performance-based alone, the honest truth is just a lot more shocking and a lot more sad. Because as great as a player and manager as Xabi Alonso was, almost from the very moment he stepped into the Santiago Bernabeu as manager, he would soon come to realize that the club would slowly be against him. We're gonna look at the brutal, unfiltered, and honest truth about this entire Xabi Alonso situation. Because this is more than just a manager. It also signals a lot of problems with the players and the club management. There was this one clip with Gareth Bale that kinda went viral.
And see what kind of system works, see how he can manage Real Madrid, because it's not the same as managing Bayer Leverkusen. You have to manage egos, players, all that kinds of stuff. So, but yeah, I think everybody knows as Real Madrid it's about managing players sometimes rather than just tactics. So,
And a lot of people seem to think that that's the only reason why Xabi Alonso would eventually leave Real Madrid. But if you take a deeper dive, that's only a small part of the bigger picture. From the very beginning, Alonso's tenure was defined by contradiction. He was told explicitly that the club wanted more structure, more discipline, and a sharper tactical edge. Originally, the message from Florentino Perez and Real Madrid's board was clear: Madrid needed evolution. But the reality that Alonso discovered was that authority at Real Madrid was conditional. It existed as long as it does not interfere with the power already entrenched in the dressing room. Alonso and his coaching staff immediately attempted to reshape habits that had been allowed to fester. Intensity at training was raised. Tactical sessions were longer and more detailed. Pressing systems and demands were drilled relentlessly. Now, these were not some radical ideas in modern elite football, but in Real Madrid, they presented a culture shock, and many senior players had grown comfortable under Ancelotti's looser approach. Freedom, autonomy, and individual expression had been prioritized over rigid collective discipline. To many in the club, Alonso's methods felt like an infringement on status rather than an upgrade in standards. It was so bad that players were actually complaining about tactical video sessions. You know, those moments where they sit down as a team, watch film of old matches, or watch film of the opposition playing, just to get a better understanding of themselves and their opposition. But for the Real Madrid players, even something as small as that was asking for too much. And the most ironic thing is that tensions were peaking during Real Madrid's strongest of runs. By late October and early November, Real Madrid had won 13 of their first 14 matches across all competitions. They defeated Barcelona 2-1 at the Santiago Bernabeu, and that result put them on top of La Liga standings. On paper, everything was working out, but behind the scenes, it wasn't. A big turning point came in the 72nd minute of that Clásico. Alonso subbed Vinicius Jr. and the Brazilian reacted furiously. It was the first real public challenge to Alonso's authority, and it reverberated throughout the club. Of course, Vinicius later apologized, first privately to Florentino Perez, then to the rest of the training staff. But the damage had been done.
Man, just crashing out over again, subbed. I mean, I get it. He wants to play, but come on. You know, you just can't crash out like that.
As reporting at the time revealed, the Madrid squad was divided. Some players believed in Alonso's ideas and methods. Mbappe, Tchouaméni, Güler, Ceballos, and Asensio were among those who initially supported him. However, others were unconvinced. Namely, Vinny Jr., Jude Bellingham, and Federico Valverde were identified as key figures who struggled with Alonso's tactical approach. They felt constrained, less free to express themselves, out of position on the pitch, and increasingly frustrated by the volume of instruction and training. So the issue wasn't about footballing tactics or philosophy. It was the hierarchy. It's not hard to see why. During Ancelotti's years, they were basically allowed to play however they wanted and essentially were spoiled. And with Alonso, when those players were resisting, some football fans were actually suggesting that they don't respect Alonso.
Maybe they didn't respect Xabi Alonso because he's not as big of a legend as Ancelotti.
Because he wasn't that big of a legend. Yeah, that couldn't be further from the truth. They just simply didn't agree with his demands, his tactics, and the way that he made them play out of style. However, when those players resist, no manager can survive long without total backing from above. And here's where the biggest issue lied. Xabi Alonso did not have that backing. And Florentino Perez's role in this saga is much more central than most people think. Remember, officially, Alonso was appointed with the president's blessing to impose discipline and modernize the team. After all, that is why he decided to part ways with Carlo Ancelotti. Apparently, he had enough with the vibes football. At the end of the day, Florentino Perez maintains ultimate control, not just over transfers or finances, but over internal power dynamics. Real Madrid is not run like a conventional football club. For many years now, it has been run almost like a political institution. Alliances matter and loyalty matters. And in the club, when conflicts arose between the players and the coaches, history suggests that Perez rarely chooses to side with the manager. As results dipped following the initial strong run, pressure mounted rapidly. In the span of 6 weeks, Madrid went from 5 points clear at the top of La Liga table to 4 points behind Barcelona. Reportedly, internal meetings were held. Xabi Alonso was encouraged to soften his managerial, training, and tactical approach. Because of the players' complaints, video analysis sessions were reduced and training demands were slightly eased. But while these concessions did buy time, it also diluted the very authority that Alonso had been hired to assert. Xabi Alonso could slowly feel it. His players didn't want to prepare, train, or play the way that he wanted them to. And when bringing it up to upper management, they refused to side with him. So as manager, what could he have done? Well, one solution we for sure know that he had was that reportedly Alonso pushed for Real Madrid leadership to sign specific transfer targets that he believed were necessary, not only to implement his tactical vision, but also players that he believed had less ego and were willing to put in the work. And one of the biggest changes he wanted to make was to add a midfield controller. Specifically, he wanted to sign Martin Zubimendi. As we all know, Zubimendi is absolutely thriving in Arsenal right now. And as we see, his game and coachability has been a huge factor in why Arsenal are top of the Premier League table right now. However, reportedly, Florentino Perez disagreed. He wanted to keep the current stars in Real Madrid thriving. And as a result of this, they hesitated and passed on the transfer opportunity to Arsenal. And even a few weeks ago, Alonso pushed for further midfield reinforcements in January. But again, according to Spanish source Tribuna, the club informed him that they would not allow any new signings in January because they believed the existing squad was capable of competing for titles as assembled.
That's tough. Right, what does that say? Real Madrid has been dealing with few injuries in the midfield, with Eduardo Camavinga struggling with his fitness. Meanwhile, Tchouaméni has been out of form, failing to score a goal since 2024. That's tough. And apparently their Real Madrid didn't back Alonso.
They believed the existing squad was capable of competing for titles as assembled. Though the Real Madrid board initially assured him of one thing, they would actually make a complete 180 and do the opposite. And what's crazy is that despite record revenues, Madrid's spending has actually been relatively conservative compared to Europe's biggest spenders. This really does kind of remind me of the initial Galacticos era, when Perez would basically focus on stars and profit over actually winning. But perhaps the most unsolvable problem Alonso faced was structural. Initially, it was really only Vini, Jude, and Valverde that were really against Alonso's changes. However, slowly Mbappe would also be added onto the mix. Tactically, Carlo Ancelotti also kind of faced the same struggles. Having to balance all these guys and include Rodrigo in the mix becomes quite the problem, because fundamentally, a lot of their play styles align. But you have to realize, this season the priority was mostly given to Kylian Mbappe. It's allowed him to thrive and be as dominant as he was as of late. But him flourishing has also kind of caused a dip in form with Rodrigo and Vini Jr. One source summed it up with brutal honesty. You can't have a balanced team with those three. Coaching at Real Madrid really does mean managing egos as much as tactics. It means understanding when authority must bend or break. Alonso, who's a purist by nature, struggles to compromise without losing himself. However, that kind of does all go out the window when the players' egos are just way too much to handle. And that Supercopa loss to Barcelona was the final nail in the coffin, as Kylian Mbappe, who had initially been on Xabi Alonso's side, never really showed much resistance until late, blatantly refused to give Barcelona the guard of honor, completely disregarding manager Xabi Alonso's decision as he would wave to his teammates to walk off the pitch. And Real Madrid fans are actually kind of split on this decision. Some will try to defend Mbappe, saying things like that red card tackle by Frankie de Jong and the gestures towards Mbappe from Kubarsi and Fermin, which by the way was enough to warrant a disciplinary review, kind of giving both Real Madrid players and fans rather explicit gestures, might have heavily upset Mbappe and caused him to react the way he did. Although the point remains that the way he handled it really shows a lot of blatant disrespect towards Xabi Alonso. But the one thing it really does show is the team is disconnected as a whole. The players aren't playing for their manager is not being supported by the board and upper management. And it's in my opinion that this whole entire situation really is just incredibly unfair for Xabi Alonso. Not long after, the club would later announce that a mutual agreement had come between them and Alonso, as he would no longer be with the club. And now he's going to be replaced by another former teammate and Real Madrid player.
I mean, look, I'll say this quickly, and it might be a pretty obvious thing to say, but excuse me, but I'll say it anyways. All right, so when you're like, obviously Real Madrid players, they're going to have big egos. Like, they're playing for arguably the biggest, well, not arguably, they are the biggest club in the world. Like, I think there's no debate. Yeah, you can say you put Barcelona up there. You could put I don't know, like Manchester United, even though they're not the best right now, but I would still put them up there as the biggest clubs in the world. You know, you could say Liverpool, Arsenal, or any other clubs, but Real Madrid, they are the biggest club in the world, and obviously the players that are playing for Real Madrid, they're going to have big egos, and that's what managers should expect.
Himself, Alvaro Arbeloa. But if the players aren't going to work hard and change their ways for Xabi Alonso, I'm pretty confident that they wouldn't do it either for Arbeloa. What I'm entirely expecting is that Arbeloa is basically going to continue what Carlo Ancelotti was doing with the vibes of football, basically letting the players do what they want. Because given that situation, I don't think even Zinedine Zidane could have forced those players to train and sacrifice their own playing time if it meant winning like Xabi Alonso wanted to. For me, realistically, the only solution that Xabi Alonso really had was to make those transfers and sign those players that he initially wanted. This would have done two things. Firstly, it would have shown the current Real Madrid players that if they weren't with the program, the manager and the club would have no problem of letting them go and bringing someone else in that will. However, because Real Madrid management refused to move their players and keep their stars, even though their discipline and playstyle did not match what their manager wanted, it really shows the club's regression and current mentality. They're basically treating things like their mid-2000s Galacticos, a team full of stars and commercial success, but very few silverware to show for it. And if Xabi Alonso was allowed to move players and show them he was serious, I'm sure many of them would have changed attitudes real quick. If Xabi Alonso brought in the players he wanted to, even without transferring their current rotation, they would have been on the bench and hungry to come back in on the pitch, finally giving in to their coach and showing a little more effort. However, Real Madrid's board and Florentino Perez made it clear they would side with the players and abandon their coach's plans. Xabi Alonso's downfall was not about tactics or results alone. It was about a club that wanted to change, but only on its own terms, and was very hesitant in eventually doing so. No one's denying that the Real Madrid players aren't stars, but a team that's players are disconnected from their manager can't win anything. And perhaps some of the senior players have an overinflated ego because of their success in the past, especially with their core players being so young that success can get to their head and kind of give them an overinflated sense of self-importance. And in the very first match that Xabi Alonso left, Real Madrid would lose 3-2 to Al.
Oh, that's embarrassing. That is embarrassing. And I gotta whisper a little. I'll try to be a little more quiet because everybody around me is sleeping. Well, everybody in this house is sleeping.
Albacete in the Copa del Rey. Yeah, without Xabi Alonso, Real Madrid just lost to a club that was 17th place, not even in La Liga, but a club that was 17th place in the Segunda Division.
In the second division? That's crazy.
Almost instantly, it shows you that getting rid of Xabi Alonso was a huge mistake. And honestly, he deserved much better. So I'm tired of those narratives that say Alonso failed at Real Madrid, because he didn't. It was both the club and the players that failed him. And if a certain club in the Premier League that he used to play for decides to bring him on board as their next manager, well, I'm all for it. And I would love to see him succeed.
That's tough. Poor Xabi Alonso. All right, man. Moving on to college football. Prediction for Indiana versus Miami. The Natty, the national championship. Let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, hope all of you having a great weekend. Hope all of you having a great Saturday. If not, hope this video can make it a little bit better. And man, oh man, it is time for the Indiana Hoosiers versus the Miami Hurricanes preview, aka the national championship. I'm excited. Hope you guys are excited as well. Just kind of hit me. This is a bittersweet video because this is the final, the final preview of the college football season. Man, time flies when you're having fun.
Sad, man. After Monday, no college football for months. It's sad, man, but it is what it is. Got exciting stuff coming up this year, so it won't be too bad.
It's been a great season up until this point. We had a lot of fun doing the previews, and I just want to extend my gratitude towards you guys and just my appreciation for y'all spending another season with me on the channel. Before we go any farther, I got to say big shout out to Kalshi.
We do not care.
What has led Indiana and Miami both up until this point, because we know how they've got here. I feel like I said this last week with Indiana, but you gotta say it again. They have just steamrolled everybody on their route to a college football championship, and it's actually gotten worse in the playoffs. They beat Alabama and Oregon by a 30-burger, both of them. I could sit here for the next 5 minutes and just go on a rant and tangent about how much of a well-oiled machine they are, but I've done that enough up until this point. On the flip side of it, for the U, Miami, it hasn't been as pretty, but it doesn't matter how you get to the championship. Remember that. They're here. So it doesn't matter if you win by 30 every single game like the Indiana Hoosiers, or you win by 3 like Miami's done for most of their games. you're still here. It doesn't matter how you get into a playoff as long as you get into a playoff. Very similar process as March Madness. It doesn't matter if you're the 1 seed, the 16 seed, doesn't matter if you're the 15 seed, the 2 seed, you're one of the last 4 in, you're playing in the first 4 game. As long as you're in March Madness, you got a chance. And I do want to remind college football fans, everything Indiana has done up until this point, it doesn't carry over into this game. Just because you beat Oregon by 30, you beat Alabama by 30, you don't get a head start in this game against Miami. It's 0-0. It's a clean slate. You got to put in the work and you got to show up. You can't go into this game thinking, oh, yeah, well, we're the overwhelming favorite. We're supposed to beat Miami. They've had a couple of losses this year. No. You can't play that way. And I don't think Cincinnati is going to allow them to play that way because he's under the Nick Saban coaching tree, and Saban didn't allow that with his teams. Miami barely escaped A&M. They barely escaped Ohio State, and they barely escaped Ole Miss. It's been a bumpy ride, but it's been a fun one. It's been an exciting one. Before I go any farther, let me throw this out there because whichever team I decide to pick in this game, I feel like the opposing team's fan base is going to think, oh, well, I think they're fraudulent. No. It's not anything like that. If I pick Indiana to win Miami, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to just make this loud and clear, and I want to clarify, Miami is one of the best teams in the nation, and Indiana is one of the best teams in the nation. They aren't just good, they both are great. Now that we have a crystal clear understanding, let's talk about the game itself and how I think it's going to go. Here's a big problem for Miami. They are not better than Indiana. You can say they're more talented, I don't care. Team for team, Indiana is better. They are a well-oiled machine, and like we saw against Oregon, you can have the perfect coverage, you can have great DBs, but you're not going to beat that back shoulder comeback route that Indiana loves to throw to Surratt, more so of Mendoza loves. You can play great defense, but unfortunately for defenders, great offense will always trump great defense. It is what it is, and it's not just in football, it's in basketball and other sports as well. You can't defend the perfect pass. You can't defend it. Unfortunately, I don't really see a case and scenario where Miami, I wouldn't say slows down, but I don't think they're going to shut down this Indiana offense. They're going to get theirs. It's like Steph Curry. There hasn't been a team in the history of the NBA that goes, okay, let's try to hold Curry to 0 points. No, that sounds stupid. It's blasphemous. Curry's going to score. What do you say when you talk about Steph Curry? Let's try to contain him because that's being realistic. That's being reasonable. Applying that analogy to this situation, let's try to contain Indiana if you're Miami and hold them to 21, 28 points. That'd be a good defensive showing if you could ask me. There's no debating this. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Indiana is going to score points. It's just a matter of how many. Here's my...
They will. And the scary thing is we don't know how many touchdowns. Well, what we do, I would say probably about at least 3 or maybe more.
X factor. And here's my big question. Can Miami and Carson, a.k.a. Timmy Beck, keep up with Indiana's offense? Can they go blow for blow? I don't know. It's the wild card. Indiana can go score for score with anybody. But here's the kicker. Indiana doesn't just have a great offense. They have a great defense too. And I don't know if Miami's offense can keep up with Indiana's offense. Do I trust Carson Beck? No, absolutely not. I love Carson Beck. I think he's a great quarterback, but the key word was, do I trust him? And no, I don't trust him. And Miami fans, y'all don't even trust him. Nobody that knows ball would say, I trust Carson Beck. I watched him from the start of his career at Georgia, and I watched all of his games at Miami. The problem with Timmy Beck is he can single-handedly lose you a game, and he always has 1 to 2, 3 games a year where he just has 3 to 4 interceptions and just makes careless decisions with the football. With Indiana and Mendoza, I don't have to worry about that. With Miami, I do. I want to get up here and say, well, you're going to have to try to establish the run, and Miami, even if they're not getting any yards, they're going to force the run game. I just don't think that's going to work in your favor. This Indiana defense reminds me so much, and I hate to go back to them because I know everybody hates them, but it reminds me of Alabama and Nick Saban in 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, 12, and so on, so on. And it's not by mistake. Where do you think Curt Cinetti learned how to coach this way? Under Nick Saban. He'll be the first person to tell you that. And everybody knew this back in the day. It's crazy to say back in the day because it's only about, well, I guess it is pushing 15 years ago, but you get the point. You couldn't run the ball in Alabama. You were not going to run the ball. You know, in the national championship game, LSU didn't even cross the 50-yard line. Oh, my goodness. Don't get me started on that. That's a different conversation for a different day. But same thing here with Miami. You're not going to run on Indiana. Maybe At best case scenario, this is taken into consideration. You're not going to break off a 70-yarder. Maybe you could get 100, 125, but anything past that, you're pushing your luck. I love Mark Fletcher. Miami has a good offensive line. Some may say great, but if you think they're just going to run for 5-6 yards a pop, you've lost your mind. And you haven't watched Indiana's front seven. So what does that mean, Matty boy? That's a great question, Bobby. I love to answer it. Timmy Beck's going to have to play the game of his life. I'm not talking about a B-plus game, A-minus game, which is good. No. A-plus game. Not even A game, A-plus game. He's going to have to go something like 25 for 33, 350 passing yards, couple rushing touchdowns maybe, some passing touchdowns, and he can't turn the ball over. You turn the ball over, it's going to be wraps. Indiana's not like these other teams out here. If you make a turnover, they're going to make you pay, and it's going to be bad. And don't get me twisted, Miami fans. I like this team. I stated when I was filling out my bracket, they are one of the hottest teams and most dangerous teams in this playoff because of how great I thought they were. Told you in the Ohio State preview, I think Miami has a great chance of upsetting the Buckeyes, and they did that. But here's our problem, partner. This has nothing to do with Miami. This has everything to do with the well-oiled machine that we call Indiana. And I will continue to harp on that and beat it into your brains. They are a well-oiled machine. You know how upsets happen in college football? A great team like Ohio State, they throw a pick six, or there's some scoop and score, some fluky stuff that happens. That doesn't happen in Indiana. So it's hard to even imagine a case and scenario where an upset can happen. Normally in these previews and predictions, if I think it's going to be close, we go to our checkpoints. Which quarterback do I trust more? Which coach do I trust more? And which team do I trust more? But guys, this one's not close for me. I don't have to think about it for too much longer. And I hate this is a relatively short preview and prediction video considering it's a national championship, but it is what it is. Our goal, or my job when I'm making these preview and prediction videos, whatever you like to call them, is to make the best educated guesses possible because that's all this is. It's a glorified guess. I don't know what's going to happen, and neither do you, but you try to make the best prediction possible with all the information we've seen up until this point. And the smart pick in this game, and the pick I want to make, it's not even just like, oh, I don't want to make it. No, I want to make it, is Indiana. I got the Hoosiers.
Obviously.
I think you'd be out of your mind to pick against this team, and I've watched a lot of college football. This may be a controversial take, but this Indiana team, I know they haven't won the championship quite just yet. I don't care. This is one of the best teams I've ever watched. Ever.
Yeah, 100%. I said it. I said it right after they beat Oregon. One of the best teams I've ever seen. I wouldn't put them up there as the best, but they are one of the best.
Not this year. Ever. This is up there with the 2019 LSU team, the 2020 Alabama team, and some of those other Alabama teams that won championships. So polished, just not many weaknesses at all. I hope they can get the job done because I'd hate for this perfect season to just end with a loss. It would be detrimental. I hope it'd be a good game, but if Indiana wins by 20, I'm not going to be shocked, and neither should you. I will address this because some people have been saying, well, what about the Miami edge rushers, man? They've been ferocious. I don't think it matters too much because Indiana's offensive line, they're going to hold up. They're going to be just fine. Indiana's on a different level. I'm wrong with them. Not even close. Let me give you a score, though. I will take the Hoosiers 28. I think they're going to slow the game down. Miami 14. 28-14. Mark it down. Let me know your thoughts down below.
All right. Yeah, I agree. I do think Indiana should be able to win, but me, I'm rooting. I said it on my TikTok. I am rooting for Miami to win it. Like I know. Indiana. They had. How do I say this? Like, I'm not gonna say Cinderella, but because they're way better than that. But I know Indiana's story is great, but seeing Miami just win it for the first time in like 25 years in Miami would be absolutely poetic. I think that would be absolutely amazing. But unfortunately, I don't see that happening. You know what? Well, since everybody else is around me sleeping, man, I don't want to end it. Like I don't. I want to play some games right now, but it's probably a good idea to just go ahead and end it, and then just probably stream either tomorrow or Monday before the Natty, if I have time. You know what? I'm gonna go ahead and end it. You know, this is a short little late night stream. Thank you to anybody who probably tapped in. I don't think anybody tapped in because it's such a late night stream. But anyways, have a good night.